I think government has already removed an awful lot of restrictions, and quite sensibly based on expert opinion. I wouldn't use the word excessive. I would say it's a blind spot. For some reason, it's a blind spot. Whereas we've lifted many restrictions and we said, look, you can go to bars, you can go to cafeterias, you can go to a football match, a boxing match, and even a drama festival under controlled conditions. Why can't that also apply to a bunch of people who are saying, look, we want to go out and complain that we don't agree with something government or somebody else is doing? That's the freedom of assembly. I don't understand that blind spot and why the unwillingness on the part of government to accommodate people, because after all, human rights is about respect. It's about setting the framework so that people can live together even though they might have different points of view. And I see no reason that a government and all the experts in the GHA and so on could not get together and say, okay, look, these people have a different point of view, but we can do this to minimize or to eliminate completely any possibility of risk. I think that people who are saying, look, I don't want to be vaccinated, are not saying, I think you ought to not be vaccinated. I think this is about common sense, it's about getting together, and it's about wanting to live in a society that can see that that's the only way that really we can protect our way of life.
The point about people who don't want to be vaccinated, that's going to be something I think which continues to be a talking point for weeks and months to come probably. Where does the equality rights group stand on the one hand wanting, as I understand it, people to have an individual choice in their lives, but on the other, the reality that the risk that you may pose to somebody else, a more vulnerable person, shall we say, is decreased so significantly by having a vaccine. So how do you square those two things?
Well, the way I square it is that we have an obligation to stand by our commitments to the European Convention of Human Rights, and the Council of Europe has Resolution 2361, which quite clearly says under sections 7.31 and 2 that A, you cannot make vaccination mandatory, and B, that you cannot socially or politically pressure anybody who opts not to be vaccinated. So from my point of view, as a defender of human and civil rights, I have to abide by what the strictures are on a legal basis. But again, I want to emphasize this is about government and individuals working together in a common sense sort of way. It is not a difficulty in a small community like ours to respect each other sufficiently to find ways to be accommodating with each other, neither one side nor the other, and not polarization which is happening everywhere else. I want us to avoid that. Yes, the issue of non-vaccination and travel and passports and so on, that's going to be an issue. We need to work that out, but it needs to be worked out perhaps beyond us in places like the Council of Europe, with regards to political conventions and so on, which are binding upon us. But in the meantime, I think what we have to do is to concentrate on the human aspect of this.
You're approaching this from a human rights perspective, but does the Equality Rights Group have anything to say from a public health perspective on whether an individual should be vaccinated for COVID-19 if they haven't done so already?
Look, I think we have to respect other people's points of view. I mean, I'm not here to tell people what they ought to think. I'm really just trying to advocate that everybody has a common sense attitude to this. With respect to our own point of view in Equality Rights Group, we completely congratulate government on the way that they've approached, in such careful terms, the whole pandemic issue. It's been hugely difficult for them. It's not been easy at all, and we recognize that. We're not saying don't do those things. We're saying do it in an equitable and a just and a fair way so that nobody feels that they've been left out or they've been singled out in the particular ways. We really have to ask the question, why only freedom of assembly?